I'm John Wilson. Welcome to Owned and Operated. Twice a week, we talk about home service businesses, and if you're a home service entrepreneur, then this is going to be the show for you. We talk about our own business in residential plumbing, HVAC, and electric, and we also talk about business models that we just find interesting. Let's get into it. ServiceScalers is running a promo right now where if you sign up for a year of service, you get a free website, which is awesome. We just did this in one of our businesses and it really helped a lot. It was a brand new look. Plus we got great SEO with it and PPC to help. So make sure you check out servicescalers.com, promo code OWNED. Welcome back to Owned and Operated. Today, I've got my friend Rich Jordan on. Welcome, Rich.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, this will be good. This is
Long time no talk.
Yeah, good one. Yeah, Rich and I talk almost every day. I'm trying to remember the last time you were actually on it, almost a year ago, probably. I think we talked about marketing or something at the time, and we recently re-kicked your origin story ep, which was kind of funny to re-listen to. We should probably say, like, because that was a recent one. So if people just listen to it, they're like, oh, Rich Jordan, 800,000 in sales. Do you want to like give a quick 2 minutes on like what happened in the last couple of years?
Yeah. So I guess that we did that origin story about 3 years ago.
It was in 21. Yeah, it was in 21.
Yeah, it's like early spring of 21.
Yeah.
We're sitting here April or May of 24. So, since then, so back then we had the one company in New Jersey. We had bought it at $1 million in sales. And when you and I talked, we were probably at run rate 1.6 or something like that. And since then we've bought another platform company in New Hampshire. That company was doing $3.25 million when we took it over in spring of 22, so 2 years ago. And we've done a couple little add-on customer list acquisitions and one significant acquisition in New Hampshire. So 4 acquisitions in New Hampshire total. And right now we're on pace to do $12 million in New Hampshire and $5 to $6 million in New Jersey. So 17 to 18 million this year.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of growth.
Yeah.
We're at 80, I think we're at 80 employees right now.
Mm-hmm.
When you and I talked 3 years ago, we were probably at 12.
Yeah. Yeah, that's crazy. We, sometimes I think about who I currently know, who is because there's all the OG names from 20 years ago. And sometimes I just think about who do we currently know that's going to be an OG name. And I think you'll be an OG name because 0 to almost 20 million in 4 years is nuts. Right. And obviously you just like me are eyeballing a lot more than that, which makes, this will be interesting to see the next couple of years. But I think it's fun to watch people's wild transcendence, or Jack moving from under $1 million to 5 in 20 months or something like that is all right, this is cool.
And what's cool is and I don't think it was true for the guys, in the late 90s and early 2000s is we're capturing all of it as it's happening. So you can go back to that interview from 3 years ago and see my thought process at an early stage versus where we're mature to now. So it's kind of cool.
Yeah, it is wild. Sometimes I try not to, but I have an interview that I still have to re-listen to from Service Titan, and it was late 2020. And our big thing was we were we got to break 5 million. And the next year, I think we acquired 3 companies a few months later. So, I don't know. It's crazy.
You felt like a baller because you were about to break 5.
Yeah. I'm sure I said things in there that now I'd be like, oh my God. But yeah,
that's the tough part about doing these is sometimes you listen to old interviews of yourself and you're like, oh my God.
You knew nothing. You knew nothing, Jon Snow.
Yeah.
Oh man.
In a couple of years, I'll listen back to this one. I'll think the same thing.
Yeah, probably. All right. Well, today it's May 1st, and we're talking about shoulder season, which I felt like we did okay this year. And shoulder season, for those of you that like don't really know, it's like HVAC has a couple seasons where the temperature is too mild to really do anything productive, as in you don't sell a ton of systems. So you tend to have to get very creative with how to keep things moving because you have install crews that rely on your comfort advisors to still sell stuff. So in the spring, that's usually like, March, April, sometimes February, like depending on how weird the season is. May, again, depends. It's 80 degrees right now in Ohio, so that's not shoulder. That's 80 degrees. That's hot. And then the other one is like September, August, September is when it gets kind of weird. But the spring, we talk about this a lot. Spring, like shoulder season, is the hardest one, like because it's a long time. Whereas like you can still have ACs and stuff in August, September. A lot of the stuff that we've done really well, we got from Rich. So I'm excited to talk to Rich about how he's helped mitigate his shoulder season and make it better. So you want to talk a little bit about I think a lot of what you did was last year. Like you implemented a ton of stuff last spring and it really carried you through 2 shoulder seasons now. So you've proved it twice.
Yeah. So I think it's maybe useful to kind of talk about what the shoulder season used to look like versus what it's looked like over the last year.
Yeah.
So like we used to, like you said, like September, October, even November, first half of November, and really like late August. So like back half of August, first half of November, and everything in between would be weak. And then February, March, April, would be weak as well. And weak meaning like difficult to fill the service board for HVAC. Yeah. Certainly difficult to fill the board for like things like sales quotes for replacements and stuff like that. But really filling it in HVAC service. And then after we've put a bunch of things in place, like we really started putting things in place, I'd say like March of last year, we have not had on the HVAC service front, we haven't had what feels like a shoulder season in 12 months. Mm-hmm. And that's, like the team, like at one point, I think it was like getting into November, the team was like, we haven't had a break. Mm-hmm. Like, good. You're not supposed to. Really for us, I mean, a huge part of it is memberships. And for us, like memberships means like annual maintenances. We went on a big blitz to fill or to sell memberships in the spring of last year. We've continued to carry that through. One of those things was adjusting our membership to be more desirable to the customer and like easier to sell. And then also opening it up for the office to sell it out of the office. A lot of companies and ours before, like really the technicians are just the ones that kind of offer it in the field. Maybe gets the customer a discount or whatever. And technician conversion on that for like best in class companies would be like 40%. Non-members that's best in class. Most companies would be 10% or less.
Yeah.
Right. We do a pretty good job. We're at 25 or 30% in the field.
Yeah.
But my office crushes it. My office will sell, as John well knows, my office will sell, 200 a month.
Yeah, that's wild. Like we had a competition. Yeah, we had a competition for a couple months of like who could sell the most, and I had to stop playing. I was like, this isn't fun anymore. No, you guys,
that's a huge part of the story.
you guys
of the
kill
growth,
it though.
like the overall revenue growth and the shoulder season mitigation is the memberships.
Yeah, memberships are like, I used to hear the metric of 1,000 to 1,000,000, which obviously I don't know anyone that actually lives up to that membership or that metric, but that's been a huge part of our growth too, especially in HVAC. Like HVAC is gonna 2.5 times last year, and one of the biggest things we did was like hone in on memberships. And that'll put HVAC like 8 figures, like low tens, which is kind of crazy to us, from 4 million last year. And like much of the work was like, how do you, like you said, you didn't explicitly say it, but I'm going to repeat back. Like if there's jobs on the service guys, then almost everything else will be taken care of. Like if you can keep the service guys full, you can keep the sales guys full and keep the installers full. And the way you keep service guys full is memberships.
Yeah, and I think people get it wrong. Like people not in the industry, or maybe people who haven't added memberships, get it wrong. They think about, oh, HVAC's a great business to be in because you get these recurring maintenances and it's recurring revenue. It's MRR.
Yeah.
It's like, look, it doesn't make a big dent. I mean, like maybe less than 5% of my revenue comes from my monthly memberships.
I think we're like 2.
So I can't feed my company on monthly membership revenue. It's almost like negligible. But it's the recurring opportunity, right? It's the recurring like customer interaction, customer visits. Because and maybe we can, this will be kind of freestyling and some napkin math happening, but maybe we could talk through this a little bit, John. So like if you're doing things correctly. So like my dispatcher, my call center manager, they know, like we want to stack, we want to stack the board. And for us, what stacking the board means is we have like basically a bedrock of membership maintenances that get booked on a certain day, on any given day. So we might have 33% of the board like stretched out for a long time as booked maintenances. We can throttle that up and down based on the season. How much service we're expecting to come in. And then of the overall calls that are booked, so say we have 100 calls booked on the board, we want for the day, we want 33% of those to be for equipment that is aged, right? So like equipment that's 10 years or older. We want at least 1/3 of the board to be that. Because we know at a certain percentage that aged equipment is going to flip to replacement.
Yeah.
Right. So for us, like a Nexstar benchmark is like 60% of those flip to replacement. That's never really been true for us. Like it's more like 1/3. So 33% of the board is aged equipment, and then 1/3 of that is going to flip to replacement. So 10% of the calls on any given day, if you're stacking the board correctly, are going to flip to replacement. Yeah. So it's like now you can start to like really think about and forecast where like those revenue opportunities and the different, closing rates and all that stuff. So yeah, like keeping the board full and then strategically stacking it with aged equipment.
Yeah.
Which if you have those like homeowners who are members with you, you have all their equipment data, because it's not like it wasn't just an inbound call. Like these are, you have a recurring relationship with them. So you have the equipment data, how old their stuff is. You can, kind of play the shell game of making sure you don't have too much aged equipment on today and none on tomorrow and all that stuff. So, for us, that's like the whole game. That's the varsity level of maintenances.
Yeah, I think I agree. Something that we've struggled with, and this, we were talking about this last night. But something that we've struggled with HVAC service is like staffing it. And the reason that staffing is hard isn't because of recruitment. Like we don't really have a recruitment problem. We struggle to make that department profitable on its own. So like you have enough. So like we're going into peak season, and one of our concerns is like, hey, we probably need like 11, 12 HVAC service guys. Right now we have 6. And we've bumped up to 9, 10 during like peaks. And we should probably be at 8 right now. But the problem is you're at 12.
Probably need to get 13 to 14.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's just getting the guys. It's sort of like getting them to pay for themselves. Because I think like as you're talking through this, I'm thinking about all the different things that had to happen for all that to work out the way it did. And not like work out, like obviously you did it, but it was like, yeah, memberships for sure. But like you just dove into aged equipment. You just dove into like effective dispatching. And to do all that, your guys have to know how to flip a system, and your guys have to know how to offer options effectively. And like you said, that's varsity level dispatching. And to me, that was varsity level everything. Like everything that you just described was like not what a $3 million company is doing.
Right.
So
it's hard to do.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to do. And it takes like focus and, but yeah, I'd say it was more than just dispatch, because obviously dispatch, or it's more than just memberships. Obviously memberships was a really big part of it, but like the proactive planning of like when to schedule them seemed to be a big part of it. Like, hey, how do we schedule in the down season? That's one thing that we did really effectively this year. We didn't have a slow season. Like we actually only got slow for 2 weeks in HVAC this year, which like that's insane. And we just got out of it. We were slow for the back half of April. And then literally we went into this week and sold like, I don't even know. We're at like 70 grand in HVAC today. And that's been the last few days. But like the last 2 weeks, we didn't sell anything basically in HVAC, but we only had 2 slow weeks. And I'm convinced it's because we pushed on lead flow. Now I was talking to somebody, from Logan Heating and Cooling down in Dayton, and she was awesome. And she's the president there. And, they're a pretty big company, like about twice our size, and almost all HVAC. And I just asked, because I was like, hey, like I feel like we did the stuff you just described, right? Like our memberships killed it, and our just like we were intentional with dispatch. Like our service guys never missed a beat. Now maybe we didn't have service guys because we missed options, so we totally missed on that part. But like on the dispatching and like setting them up for success part, we did well. We just didn't do well once we got there, which that's our big project now. But anyways, one of the things I asked is like, I can like HVAC, I'm only dealing with this for 2 weeks, and like, it was hard. Like it was a real challenge. And this is the thing that HVAC gets so much flack about. But how do you deal with this when your HVAC department's $50 million? Like how do you withstand the shock of that? Yeah. And it was really interesting, because what she said, which really like hit home for me in another project I'm working on in a different part of the business, is she said that they got really good at dealing, like a lot of their business growth came from the proactive buyer, which I think is really interesting, because most of HVAC is based off the uncomfortable buyer, right? They're too hot, too cold. Like I have an emergency, so I'm going to buy. And that's kind of a paradigm shift. And we're working on a project that involves that same philosophy over in plumbing right now. We're like, how do we get in front of like the discerning proactive buyer? Because we think there's like, that's a larger TAM than the people with active water leaks is the people that might, want this solution. So how are you thinking about that with HVAC sales? Thanks for checking out Owned and Operated. Wherever it is that you listen to the show, if you could take a second and give us a 5-star review, it helps other people find our stuff on the internet.
HVAC sales is hard, I think. Like we certainly, we do provide like a repair, renovate, replace option on all of our like service calls and maintenance calls. So, and that renovate option is typically like, hey, you could do this, but you could renovate your system, prevent, certain issues, whatever, get more life out of your system if you go with this option, which is significantly more than a basic repair. So we do generate some decent revenue that way. Plumbing, and I think this is what you're referencing. Like we're thinking a lot about water quality right now, water quality for drinking water, and also water quality for protecting equipment, like scale and stuff like that. We think that's going to help out. We've never really put a lot of emphasis behind that, so that's something that we're just now
dialing in. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think we could do a better job around that. We do really well on maintenances and turn that into higher ticket revenue and flipping to replacement. But proactive buyer is an interesting concept that we might not be leveraging enough. Did she go into detail as to what she really meant?
She
by
did.
that on the HVAC
Yeah,
side?
she did. Yep. So we'll dive into it. So what she was talking about was like this time of year, if someone's actively shopping, or like the last couple of weeks, right? It's like 60 degrees. Nothing interesting is happening in HVAC. So the people that are calling, and it was sort of driving me nuts, right? Like, because the schedule was full. Like we were full on opportunities, but our close rate was down. So we're trying to figure it out. And her feedback was the type of people that are calling in marketed leads this time of year are proactive buyers. They're people that probably don't have an existing problem, and they are wanting to get ahead of it, or they're wanting to find a discount, or they want to be rewarded for thinking ahead. Was the phrase that she used, which I thought that was really good. And now I don't have it dialed in on how to put that into our business, but it's a lot of the stuff that you see other competitors doing, like the BOGO, the half off this, the $2,000 this. Yeah, I mean, pick a thing. Now I do think I remember reading. Did you ever read HVAC Spells Wealth by Ron Smith?
I've not read that one.
That's interesting. You should, but it's like Ron Smith's an OG. Like he's one of the OGs, and it was that's where I got the metric 1,000 clubs per million years ago. So before I knew about Certain Path and before I knew about Nexstar, I knew about Ron Smith, and Ron Smith wrote this book called HVAC Spells Wealth. And he literally lays out the HVAC business model. Like, this is it. Like, this is how you do it. And I need to re-kick it because it probably talks about this exact problem. But he was running $20 million companies back in the 90s, like residential HVAC service replacement. Like he's an OG.
Off of a whiteboard.
Yeah, dude. He's legit. So what he talked about was, setting up a partnership, and he's like, look, we succeeded during slow time because we proactively 6 months out went to our vendors and started working on big deals and big promotions that we could both win. Cause like manufacturers need to move equipment during slow time too. Like no one wins in April in HVAC. So the goal is, how can you start, like what promotion can you get to just for like 30 days? Like, hey, Train, hey, Lennox, hey, whatever, I need an extra 30% or 20% off this equipment because I'm about to do this. Like, how can you help me help you? Like,
just this month. I'm not going to hold you to it for
30 days. 30 days. Month, yeah. Yep. Give me 30 days. Give me a promotion that's going to work, that I can help you move equipment and we can move equipment. And that was something that he talked about in a book that I read 8 years ago. And it just hasn't really been as relevant because HVAC just has been like a smaller part of our business. But now I'm going to recrack that baby open and dive into like that section again, because I think that was one of the things that she mentioned. And I was just like, man, I remember reading that in like 2016. That exact like solution. But yeah, it's proactively going to your vendor and working out like a deal just for that month. So we retroactively went and did it, and we're just like, hey, we need some help moving equipment. I know I'm in the middle of it, but what can you do? And Dan, who's great, he listens to the show, and Train and Ferguson came together and gave us something to help out. So and that's going to help us move more systems, which is going to help them and help us and help everybody. But now we know, okay, like I need to be talking about August, September, October promotion in June. So in a couple of weeks, I need to start like working proactively and really like, how do we move, $500,000 of units each month ahead of time. Yeah. So that's something that we're trying to think a lot about to get ahead of the next one. Because I think we nailed the lead flow section of like our service guys like never had a slowdown. There wasn't a minute. Yeah, they just have consistently run. It's honestly been one of our best recruiting tools. Like, hey, we don't slow down. That's like not a thing that we experience. But
it's the replacement. It's the replacement quotes and the sales, closing on replacements that has slowed down for us. That's where we have felt a slowdown. It's like services pumping. They're flipping the leads, but they're not closing, and the marketed leads have come down. In the slow time.
Yeah.
And close rates are even on the lesser amount